So Sonic Colors Ultimate. After all of these years of waiting, I am finally able to fulfill my unearthly desire to play this game. I've been a Sonic fan for as long as I can remember, and yet for the longest time I've never played any of the big mainline Sonic games. Little Doofenshmirtz backstory here. I remember walking into my local video game store and just seeing Sonic Generations on the shelves the year it came out, and absolutely begging my parents to buy it for me. Luckily, I soon managed to fulfill that dream of playing this masterpiece of a game around last year. Basically almost 10 years of my life only watching YouTube videos about this game, because for some reason my younger self never thought to buy it online and didn't believe in buying things digitally until Mania came out. Since then, I've become a much smarter person, I think.
Nice throw!
And I've played a ton of 3D Sonic games. Generations, Forces, 06, Monkey Ball, Team Sonic Racing, and also the demo of Unleashed, because the used version I found of the full game must have been broken or something, since it wouldn't load past the first loading screen. Still haven't mentally recovered from that traumatizing experience. Now why do I bring all this up? Well, you see, I wanted to give you a clear look as to my perspective when playing Sonic Colors Ultimate. Just the existence of this game on my shelf and being able to watch the opening cutscene from my PS4 still feels surreal to me. Being able to play this game is a literal dream come true, and I appreciate and thank everyone who put their efforts into making this remaster a reality. With that in mind, I'm gonna complain about it now. I love this game, but yeah, I agree with most people when it comes to the story. It's not good. But Speedster Creations, I hear you ask. I know Sonic Colors' story is bad. I saw someone say it on Twitter. So what is the point of this video? Well, my humble viewer, I want to go deep into analysing what makes this story just so bland and forgettable. Most complaints tend to be fairly surface level, like the jokes aren't funny or the writing's bad, but I want to analyse all the little details and nuances in the story that cause it to be the way that it is. So hopefully I can bring up some points that you may not have thought about before. So with that said, let's take a look at the problems of Sonic Colors Ultimate story and what the series should do moving forward. Okay everyone, before we get right into this video, there's something that I need to do. That is a quick recap of the story of Sonic Colors. Yeah, it was inevitable that at some point I was gonna have to give this game this kind of treatment, so let's do this recap. Sonic and Tails are going on a nice little date at an amusement park. There they search for the evil Dr. Eggman, also known as Baldy Nosehair. Eggman plans to take over the world with the power of mind control and the Wisps, a race of aliens that begin with a W and are forced to power Eggman's evil plot. But the Blue Boy doesn't know that yet. These Wisps include Cube, Laser, Frenzy, Spike, your mum, Rocket, and so on and so forth. After a bit of foreshadowing, Sonic proceeds to discover the Doctor's evil plot, and now dedicates his life to freeing the Wisps across each planet.
There she goes!
Against all odds, Sonic defeats the buses and power generators found on Tropical Resort, Sweet Mountain, Planet Wisp, Asteroid Coaster, etc, etc. Soon, Sonic discovers the Wisps are being turned evil. Oh no. Anyway, after destroying the last power generator, the Wisps are saved, and everyone celebrates. But much like the story, all is not good, as the amusement park is being turned upside down to a black hole. Eggman wa ima oke no roboto o moto imasu. Sonic ga aramasu. Ima kara hashimasen. Shikashi ima, kouen no zentai hahima. Jisanadan pen ni hokai shite imasu. Sonic ha buraku hou ni makiko mauimasu. Luckily, thanks to the power of plot armor, the Wisp save Sonic and Tails and drop them back down into Windows XP, and the day is saved once again. And that's the story of Sonic Colors in its entirety. Fret not all who can't comprehend what the heck I just said. Even the recap is really just an anime reference. Now that you know the narrative, the rest of the video begins now.
Presentation!
I want to begin with maybe one of the biggest problems that contributes towards making this story feel so bland and forgettable. The presentation. I'm not talking about the quality of the graphics or how nice the game itself looks, because even with the poorly upscaled cutscenes, they still look nice enough. And the CGI cutscenes of course look great. I'm talking about how these are shown to the player, things like cinematography and stuff. Presentation isn't something you would usually think of when examining a story, but I like to think that in a medium like this especially, it can really affect someone's perception of a story's quality. Part of this issue also comes down to writing, but I'll get into that later. A simple piece of great presentation can especially enhance and accentuate specific story beats. For example, there's this little video game that somewhat recently got released that really shows what I'm talking about, and that is the extremely underrated Neo The World Ends With You.
Let the shine reveal. This right here is my favorite thing ever.
In my opinion, the story in this game is amazing, and the absolute highlights of the story are the moments where the game becomes cinematic. There's something that just screams high production value about these cutscenes that feels like they came straight out of a stylized movie. But yeah, spoilers for towards the end of this game. Just look at the cinematography in this scene. Each time the camera cuts to a new camera angle, it's always in a dynamic position that helps to accentuate the severity of the story beats. How the characters are presented is likewise just as dynamic and interesting. The animation is really well done, and the movement of each character shows exactly how they're feeling. All this and more heavily contributes towards making these scenes extremely impactful. Now let's look at a Sonic Colors cutscene. Any interesting camera work? No! Do the characters appear to be particularly engaged?
Nope.
Are they doing anything that could engage me as a viewer? Take a wild guess.
Yes. Wrong!
In 90% of Sonic Colors cutscenes, nothing is really happening. The characters are talking like they've done something, but because of how the cutscenes are presented and the visual content within them, this isn't cleverly or memorably communicated at all. The majority of cutscenes in this game consist of Sonic and Tails just standing around with a static camera staring at them. The occasional shot like this is fine, but for almost every single cutscene though, really? Imagine watching a movie with this level of camera work. It sounds pretty boring, doesn't it? It rarely feels cinematic, or even at the very least appropriate for the story. Instead, the camera angles feel like I'm watching security camera footage of them.
Bomb!
Look at this scene when the amusement park is tumbling down from the black hole.
When I feel the ground shaking under my feet and see plumes of dust rising and rubble tumbling and aliens running for their lives, yeah, I get a bad feeling.
Where? The entirety of the tropical resort is falling apart. So naturally, Sonic and Tails just stand there and continue talking before fading to black. You could have had Sonic speeding around the resort, checking on the wisps as the camera quickly chases after him. You could have had some moments of debris almost falling onto the wisps, and really getting to see their reactions behind these moments. Wait, that's exactly what they're talking about. And we don't see any of it, meaning we forget it, making what is meant to be an engaging cutscene forgettable and uninteresting. There are so many opportunities for some dynamic presentation in these scenes, and it just ends up being wasted potential, thus drastically weakening the quality of the story's entertainment. But of course, presentation isn't everything. Just look at Inferno Cop. What really is important is the
I'm doing it! I'm doing it! Yeah! Yeah! Pinch some of these! Pinch some of these! Almost there! And... done! Now let's see how it looks so far.
Triplets born, the throne awaits. A seer warns of a deadly fate.
This is an aspect of colours that almost everyone agrees with. The writing just isn't that great. There's the occasional funny line, although even then it's usually ironically funny. Stuff like, "No copyright law in the universe is gonna stop me," or my personal favourite, "Baldy nose hair." It's the same kind of enjoyment you get from watching Mark Wahlberg in The Happening. Side note, I'm not going to talk about the characterization of Sonic and Tails because I'm guessing you already know about the problems with it. It is the most talked about point about the writing in this game, and I honestly don't have a bigger problem with the characterization as other people do. Anyway, here's the thing, a platformer's story especially doesn't need to be great for a game to be great. What most platformers do is they use the story beats as an excuse to explore the level design. The original Crash Bandicoot story, for example, is basically only a few cutscenes, but no one really complains about it, because the simple story knows what it is and doesn't overstay its welcome. Sonic Colors, on the other hand, does the exact opposite. Colors' story attempts to be grander in scale and more prominent than what it really needed to be. For starters, there are way too many plot points that the writers introduced that either go nowhere or have no impact. For example, did you know that there's a subplot in the game where Sonic and Tails say to like and subscribe to the Speedster Creations YouTube channel?
Hey, what are you doing? No. Sorry about that, folks.
For example, did you know that there's a subplot in the game about Yakka disappearing?
Sonic, I haven't seen Yakka for a while.
Since when? At no point during the story is Yakka ever mentioned to be missing. Assuming he's somewhere in this crowd on Planet Wisp, the last time we see Yakka is only 4 cutscenes ago. This plot point comes out of nowhere and only exists to create some more artificial tension for Sonic and Tails. creating more stakes for the safety of the Wisps, which it still doesn't do because we as an audience already know what Eggman's doing to them. The worst part about this is that for this plot point to have any effect on us as a viewer, we need to already care about Yakka. Not the Wisps as a whole, Yakka specifically. And I'm sorry to all the die-hard Yakka fans out there, but he's just the generic Wisp. What the f***? Even Sonic doesn't care about Tails' concern over Yakka. The writers are putting in plot points without the proper build-up required to make them effective. The same goes for the scene where Tails becomes mind-controlled by Eggman, for 50 seconds. I counted. This plot point is meant to show us the real danger behind Eggman's plan, but the fact that it's concluded so quickly and we never see its effects again to this extent, results in the plot point being extremely forgettable and underwhelming. Another admittedly smaller issue with the writing in this game is that it's clear that the writers didn't care about the stories of previous Sonic games, most likely because they didn't know anything about previous Sonic games.
Well, I still can't believe he kidnapped a whole planet. How does somebody do that?
Nope, no idea.
If I was a writer on this game, I might have added a quick little nod to the Sonic CD, or just not draw attention to it in this way at all. All they're doing is writing in a dumb line for casual audiences, and a disrespectful line for fans of the series you're currently writing for. Now, in my opinion, the main thing I want in a Sonic the Hedgehog story isn't lots of characters, or Sonic to be like he was in the Adventure days, or anything like that. I just want a good story, plain and simple. It's why I think the Sonic movie was so popular among both fans and critics. It wasn't trying to incorporate different elements of the games into one movie, its main focus was just making a fun and entertaining movie, which it did. Now, with that in mind, Sonic Colors just needed to have writing that worked to be considered good. It might not be super memorable, but at least it would be inoffensive. So why is it that at times the writing in Colors just doesn't even make sense? Like this bit at the beginning of the game.
I wouldn't say it was that easy.
I can't believe somebody was dumb enough to leave the keys in this thing. It's like Eggman's begging us to sneak in and trash the place.
Just thinking about it makes my head feel like—
Shut up, Tails!
Tails mentions that getting into the amusement park was not that easy. And then it cuts to them literally just standing there in an elevator. It wasn't even difficult to get the elevator working, the keys were already there. I think what they were trying to do was say that the speed from the elevator caused Tails to get sick. But A, this isn't funny or necessarily in character for Tails to say, and B, if this is what the writers are going for, it's pretty poorly written into the script, because I only realised it after looking for things to talk about for this video. Speaking of being poorly written and not in character, Tails doesn't think Eggman has an evil plan for a good portion of the game. Why? So in this game, Tails thinks that this guy doesn't have an evil plot.
What are you trying to pull?
Why is this part of the script? Do I even need to explain why this is poor writing? Just another plot point that goes nowhere. These are the kinds of issues that are consistent with Sonic Colors. And the negative impact they ultimately may have varies between each example, but the fact is that this is the kind of writing that Colors is made of. And that is a large part to why fans and casual audiences just don't care for this game's story. Writing is extremely important, but you gotta remember that you can't have a good story without good— Oh yeah, I'm also talking about the gameplay as part of this section, so yeah. A large issue with this story doesn't even necessarily come from the writing, but how the story connects to the gameplay. This isn't a movie, and
This isn't a game.
that's not true. So both the story and gameplay should preferably be directly connected. Although Colors does try to do this, the overall pacing and execution created from this ain't great. The only times in the game where I felt that what I did in the gameplay directly progressed the story was with the final world Terminal Velocity, and maybe Tropical Resort at the beginning of the game. In Terminal Velocity, before you even begin to run across the space elevator, we get to see the amusement park begin to be destroyed, setting up the context of the final level. Then in the next level, boss cutscene establishing the Nega Wisp armor, then you fight it in the gameplay. Final level, a black hole is being formed, and Sonic needs to run away from it like the Flash runs from the cops. setting up the context behind the final chase sequence. This overall pacing and structure is perfect for this kind of game. Before you even begin the level, the context behind why you're running in the level is established, giving the player more motivation to play through the level, while also giving the level more impact on the player and its importance to progressing the story.
This ain't the level, the next level's the level!
Sonic Heroes basically does this exact thing. Without having a story cutscene to tell the player exactly why they're running through this level, it just becomes another video game act, making the story as a whole much more forgettable. Unfortunately, this is what the majority of stages are like in this game, and when there is a cutscene that could be used to establish some actual character motivation, it's usually wasted on a repetitive boss cutscene that only artificially attempts to progress the story. Yes, it introduces the context behind the final fight Sonic is about to have, which is good, but if these fights aren't directly progressing the story, then what's the point? In context of the game and the gameplay, I've already seemingly freed most of the wisps on this planet. The last thing I need to do is destroy the generator, and from what we as an audience are shown in these cutscenes, the bosses aren't stopping me from doing that. They're basically the equivalent of when your parents meet an old friend at the supermarket. You do a little side quest, then continue on your mission like it wasn't important. And that's the thing, they're not important. Since these cutscenes aren't really progressing the story, they slow down the overall pacing of the game, placing much more time between the story beats that do matter, making them less exciting when you get to them. It's padding. It doesn't help that you only see the effects of destroying the generators in the last 20 minutes of the game. Again, another reason for the poor pacing affecting the story as a whole. Likewise, the gameplay is just the means to reach the next cutscene, not a requirement for understanding the plot or progression, continuing to bring down the quality of the pacing and story. One of the largest issues I've presented so far to the jury has essentially been a combination of poor execution and unutilized potential, and in my opinion, the part of the story that says this the most has to be,
Just think of all the hundreds more stories to be told using the same 8 characters and 4 locations. The possibilities are never-ending.
This is an aspect that might need some explanation. The locations themselves in Sonic Colors Ultimate are incredible. The level themes are so inspired and visually unique from each other. You can't tell me you haven't just stopped thinking about the gameplay to stare at the spaceship in neon light-covered Starlight Carnival, or the Japanese ocean aesthetic of Aquarium Park, or the lusciously green plants visually contrasted by the metallic construction of Planet Wisp. These locations are some of my favourite in the Sonic series, and they are wonderful. So why is it that we almost never get to explore these planets as part of the story? The vast majority of cutscenes don't really take place on these unique planets. Instead, they almost always take place on these grey wisp energy generators, with the planet you're on only in the background. These are basically all the same place with a different green screen attached. And keep in mind that these generators are the main locations for almost every single boss cutscene. It just gets visually repetitive, and as a result makes the individual story moments of saving each planet blend into each other. The only reason I would consider this a real issue is because of the large disconnect between the story and the gameplay. Imagine if these Eggman generators were organically built into the planets, and part of the story and gameplay revolved around finding them, instead of just suddenly being there when the script demands it. What if the generator on Sweet Mountain was a giant soda cup, and the straw was like the main conductor draining the wisp energy? You could even connect it to the stage where you run around the giant burger. Boom, you look good for this. Boom, location directly coincides with the story. Here's a really good idea. Kind of inspired from the Swan story arc from Eden Zero. Good anime, recommend it, don't show your kids.
And we'll stop right there.
What if on Starlight Carnival, one whole spaceship was the generator, and Sonic and Tails had to take the ship for themselves to shut it down, but then, to have this location be more integral to the plot, the ship could be used to travel to all the other planets more efficiently once they took down the generator, or maybe because the generator will now be inactive, Eggman lets them keep the spaceship, while also telling them that it's inconsequential to his actual plan. I feel like this idea would not only make going to Starlight Carnival more integral to the plot, but it would also give Eggman a greater presence in the story, while also making the story even more intriguing, interesting, and memorable. Boom.
Did somebody
Private dope!
The location, story, and gameplay are directly related to progressing the plot, making the act of advancing the story much more interesting. And this is just a random idea I had. These are the kind of story beats that can make a story feel less like a checklist and more like an exciting journey. Sonic and Tails traveling to and saving different planets in space. How cool does that sound? And yet, because of how the locations are utilised within the story of Sonic Colors, everything just feels small, repetitive, and almost inconsequential until the very end of the game, resulting in a major element of the story that could have been one of the best in the series, but instead just manages to feel empty and simply just there. Again, the locations themselves are great. It's just that their lack of unique direction towards the plot causes the story to suffer as a result. I honestly wasn't expecting to talk about this game for so long, but now I feel like I've mentioned everything about this game's story that I wanted to say. Wonder what I should do now. Oh, maybe I could...
Right on!
Sonic Colors had the potential to have a really interesting story. There are so many great individual elements that, if used well together, could have created something really memorable, but instead we're left with a video game story with so much untapped potential. Eggman has been developing a mind control device to seemingly take over the world, and yet we never feel the stakes behind it. There are so many memorable locations that could have been utilised to make the story feel like a massive journey, and yet they're severely underutilised. The story could have better contextualised the gameplay, but much like everything else in this game's narrative, the opportunity given to them wasn't taken. Even though the original Sonic Colors is over a decade old, I believe the story in this game is still a great example of the style and quality of Sonic stories we're currently getting. Which is why I wanted to talk about every reason I could think of that contributed to this story's lackluster reputation, so we can see exactly where this franchise can improve. Also, I just like talking about Sonic. It's fun, but this whole video is just my thoughts on what I consider to be problems. If you think differently, that's cool. Maybe talk about how you might improve Sonic Colors yourself in the comments below. Either way, I'm gonna keep making videos about whatever I feel like, all without being monetized. Because in the wise words of high school pretty boy Tamaki,
Long live the poor!
Now this video has been me mostly criticising the negative aspects of Sonic Colors' story, even though I really do love this game as a whole, but I like to generally have my channel keep a positive atmosphere. So before we end this video, let me ask you a question. Has Sonic Team improved since this game? Have they seen the flaws behind this story and attempted to fix them? Well, yeah. And in some areas I think it's great. Although the quality of the stories is still debatable, they're putting in more effort into creating proper story arcs and memorable moments like with Eggman and the Avatar in Lost World and Forces. The cutscenes and even some gameplay elements are honestly really cinematic at times. Like the moment of the crab chase in Forces. This is awesome. Even the writing in terms of characterization has at least been great in Boom in the movie, so that's at least a good step in the right direction. Like most people on the internet yelling at this little blue rat, I love this franchise so damn much. And I just want to see the Sonic franchise succeed, because I know it can. Sonic Colors may have been the beginning of the downgrade in story quality of mainline Sonic titles, but I have hope that the next mainline Sonic game will learn from Colors' mistakes to make the best Sonic story possible. That or I'm in denial.
Awesome!